The end of the season is going to be a wild one between these Big 12 opponents. And one of the biggest reasons is because Utah is not going to be as bad as they were last year. That is a known fact. And the reason that I know that is because I have the biggest expert to tell you why, right here on a Locked On College Crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On College Crossover, Locked On Kansas State, and Locked On Utes, Big 12 Talk, bringing you your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Christian Rauh here with JT Wistrcill, and we are going to bring it to you with some fun episodes. And JT, we got to talk Utah, we got to talk Kansas State, and there is no way in my mind that Utah is going to be a team that is towards the bottom of the Big 12 in 2025. I know there's a little bit of hype. I know the preseason poll that Locked On Podcast Network kind of had you towards the middle, little upper middle, if you will. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. But in my mind, there's just no way we're going to see Kyle Whittingham let this program be towards the bottom of the Big 12. This is one of those deepest conferences where we can never know what's going to happen. It's probably the biggest mystery where we have it on full display. Last year, we predicted Arizona State to be towards the bottom. Well, they won the whole dang thing. I don't know if I want to go on record to say Utah can win the whole thing. I think there's definitely quite the possibility. But why? Let's get you going here. Why is Utah a team to be scared of this year? Like, why there should be some concern? Why is there hype for Whittingham and this Utes team?
Great being on with you, Christian. I think there's a lot of hype for this Utah team because they do return a lot of talent from last season's team, and they brought in some strong transfers as well. Maybe sitting here, they're hearing that, and you go, what do you mean a 5-7 team returns talent? Yeah, they were just really bad at the position that matters the most, quarterback. It was bad last year. And say what you want about Utah's transfer quarterback, Devin Dampier, but there are a few key facts to keep in mind when you are talking about him. The only player in college football last year to rush 4,000 yards and throw for over 2,500 yards. He led the country in yards per carry. Yes, obviously a lot of that being scrambles, but still incredibly impressive what he was able to do. So I actually think right along with Avery Johnson, we were talking about one of the best dual threat QBs in the Big 12 right away. And you might say, well, he's transitioning to a new offense, right? I mean, slightly. It's the same offensive coordinator at New Mexico, Jason Beck, and those two combined to help New Mexico have the fourth most yards per game in the country last year, together with the Lobos. Now with the Utah Utes, you hope that's a massive offensive upgrade. So that's the quarterback spot for Utah. But this offensive line looks really impressive. I think it's going to be a top 15 unit. If you look at any 2026 NFL mock draft, Spencer Fano, Utah's right tackle, is going to be one of the first off the board. And the Utah's left tackle, Caleb Lomu, usually not far behind. You get all of the guys returning on the interior as well, too. Massive questions at the pass catcher spot, but you do get a Washington State running back transfer. Wayshawn Park, who had over 700 yards on the ground as a true freshman last year. So the ground game looks to be really strong, and you hope with those pack boxes, you just got some receivers that can do enough. Utah lost a lot of veterans defensively last year, but this is a Utah team that has built their culture on defense. They were second best in the Big 12. I'm anticipating a massive leap forward for the offense and a slight step back for the defense. When I say slight step back, I don't think they're going to finish second, but I'd be shocked if they're outside of the top 5. It's a really talented group. You got some questions about how the pass rush unit will do for Utah, but the defensive line has the bias to stop the run. Really good linebacker, like the secondary a lot. I think they might have one of the best safety duos in the Big 12 conference too. And we already mentioned Kyle Whittingham. I think he's still one of the best coaches in the conference. Is he the best coach? I'm willing to say no. I think he's mismanaged the quarterback situation. But when you look at what he's done, he knows how to win at a high level. Last year, he said it was the most frustrating year of his career. That is a man determined in Kyle Whittingham to have a nice, strong season. He's on record too. Or he's not on record, but sources are on record saying it was planned to be Wits last year too. He wants to go out on top this year if all things go well. There's a lot of reasons to think they could, even if it's not a Big 12 title. I expect Utah to be in the thick of the conference title race down the end of the regular season.
There's so much excitement for Utah this year. There's a lot of hype, and you're bringing it too, and for good reason. You bring up Beck, the offensive coordinator, and I think this is a fun one to go into. How much are we going to give the keys to him? Like, is Witt going to let loose and let Dampier and Beck do that? Obviously, the offensive line is going to be really impressive. You're right. Anytime I look at mock drafts, those are the first two offensive linemen I see off the board. For most part, maybe one in the middle between them, but nothing other than that. It's really exciting. And of course, we'll see exactly how fun the rest of the weapons can be around Dampier. You know, when you talk about quarterbacks in the Big 12, it's so deep. There's so many good quarterbacks in this conference. So when you see Dampier pop up on certain certain rankings that are above some of those other ones you're not expecting. I know On3 came out with one. Dampier was in the top 5. There was a lot of I'm not going to lie to you, I was a little taken back. What do you mean he's in the top 5? But you just backed it up. He brings a lot of excitement to the game. But as you mentioned, it's in a new Power 4. It's with the Big 12 now. But he brings the same offensive coordinator. How much of the keys will Beck have?
I think he's going to have a lot. I do expect Kyle Whittingham to let Jason Beck do what Jason Beck does. Is there going to be some restrictions potentially? But because of how much Jason Beck wants to run the ball, I do feel like we're going to see him get to do a lot of things that helped him be successful at New Mexico. I think you are going to have to live with some, Devin Dampier, he did throw 12 picks last year. Now, diving through those games, I do think a lot of those are actually on his receiver. So will he hit 12 again? It's possible. But I do look at that quarterback and say, okay, more times than not, he was one of the best things that offense did still have going for him last year. And I think when you say hey, he was only sacked 5 times, he played some P4 teams, Arizona, Auburn, and even Washington State, who's just a recently non-P4 team anymore, right? And he was still only on the season sacked 5 times. The biggest reason to me that is his elusiveness too. So I really think that's going to be a big threat. But yeah, I feel like that Jason Beck is going to be able to run his offense with this Utah team. It's kind of a weird offensive coordinator search for them. Beck in some ways ended up being their 3rd choice, but when you look at what he brings, I think he could very well end up being the right guy that they landed, maybe even the best of some of those other candidates that they missed out on too. He was a former BYU quarterback too, so kind of funny that he's now Utah's offensive coordinator, but I do feel like because it's such an offense that's predicated on the run game too, there's going to be some quarterback runs in there for Dampier. I do feel like he's going to be able to be allowed to do his thing. And yeah, I mean, Kyle Whittingham has notoriously been a guy who's like, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're not going to put the ball in harm's way. He hates turnovers. That's another thing too. Well, Dampier did a good job overall last year of not fumbling it, not turning it over, at least when it came to running the ball. So yeah, I think they still will let him air it out and throw it a little bit, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see what this Utah offense looks like for this upcoming season. I think there's a chance Utah can have a major turnaround. And, Kansas State, I don't think, Christian, they're not in need of a major turnaround. But do you think this was a team that a lot of people said would be in the Big 12 title game and obviously didn't end up working out that way? Do you feel like it's a roster that's ready to make a run at that title game? And we talk, Devin Dampier needs to improve. But I could also say I think Avery Johnson needs to get better if you guys want to be there as well.
I completely agree. And before I get to Kansas State, I got to get one knock. It must be really nice for you to have a quarterback that's not qualified for AARP and Cam Rising anymore. Okay, I had to get it out. I had to make sure I got the Cam Rising joke into the mix at least once. This is the first time we're talking. I had to make sure I got the 50-year-old conversation in here. Looking at Kansas State, no, I absolutely agree. Look, I think the world of Avery Johnson, I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in college football next year, JT, not just in the Big 12. I'm calling him a dark horse candidate for the Heisman Trophy. I do think that he has the potential to be where he needs to be, and there's a lot of good weapons around him, and I'll explain that in a minute. But you're right. There was some inconsistencies last year, but I like to think of that as he was basically a freshman. Right. He was basically, although he was a sophomore, but it was the first year of him having the keys as the quarterback for Kansas State. He sat behind Will Howard the year before. He goes in, he takes over, he becomes his team in 2024. Obviously, he starts pretty strong, 7-1. The wheels start to fall off towards the end of the season. Came off at a weird time against Houston. Never really could get it back. But then momentum started to come back. And you got that momentum in the Rate Bowl against Rutgers, had an amazing comeback win against that Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And not only was it Avery Johnson doing some great things, but it was some of the weapons around him. Dylan Edwards had an amazing game. Jace Brown had some great catches. Both of those players are back and starting in their respective positions. And you saw Matt Wells as the offensive coordinator, the true offensive coordinator, making those play calls. He's no longer the co-offensive coordinator with Connor Riley. He's now the offensive lineman coach for the Dallas Cowboys. You got Matt Wells as the only guy calling the plays. I think that consistency, that structure, and that known culture, and then you add in just having a second year of Avery Johnson, not only is just the quarterback. It's not just the guy that's has the keys. Now it's the guy knowing it's his team. He's not just the quarterback. He's the leader of this organization. I think that means a lot. So yes, he needs to make a step forward. There were some inconsistencies with his passing last year. I think that he was also hurt towards the end of the season. You can't tell me otherwise that he wasn't 100% after the Colorado game. And there was just some issues. I think it was a midsection injury, if I remember correctly. So keeping him healthy, which he's put on over 15 pounds of muscle, plus he's got faster 23-mile-an-hour club this past offseason. There's a lot to be excited about for Avery Johnson, 100%.
Yeah, and he's a quarterback that is incredibly talented, right? I have it right here, over 3,000 yards last year, 25 touchdowns too. And, you mentioned Dylan Edwards already. Like, when I look at Kansas State, I think they are going to be right there through the thick of the Big 12 conference too. I absolutely see them as a top 4 team. Right now, I have Tech versus Utah in my conference title game, but if you're telling me that's Kansas State, I'm not surprised at all too. I think the only questions I have about this team is, even though I do like Edwards, DJ Giddens is gone, right? Johnson, you already mentioned, injured, so some things go into that. And I don't swear by this stat, but the fact that he was 49th in QBR, I don't love. Still double figures in picks too. And I'm someone who I think Dylan Johnson's going to be good, but I'm also someone who thought Utah was going to be good last year. And now, granted, that was more due to quarterback injuries, I think, than anything else. But still, we see things sometimes go wrong too. I want to see if those other pass catchers are going to be able to step up too. I know you lost a lot in the secondary as well. And I am curious in the pass rush department too overall. Those are kind of how I feel about Kansas State. That's why they're not number one in the Big 12 to me. Obviously, get up 2 returning starters on the offensive line. Chris Klieman is one of the best coaches in the conference. You're always going to be good up there too. Second best run defense in the Big 12. We know you got some really good linebackers too overall. So that's kind of how I feel about Kansas State. What do you think of that assessment?
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think you made a lot of really good points, actually, from somebody who doesn't cover them every day. You must be listening to my show, JT. That must be what it is. But Christian, the thing is there's just a lot of things that have to go right for Kansas State, and they have to replace a lot of things. They had a great transfer portal. They had great retention, but they did bring a lot of good weapons. Let me do a Ryan Seacrest thing right here, and let's do that right after the break. But first, JT, let's talk about Drip Drop. Drip Drop is an amazing thing. I got the chance to try it out, and it's today's sponsor. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days, or campuses, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where Drip Drop comes in. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my jokes about Cam Rising, every skin gets better, the fluids every day. It isn't just easy. It's what I've been loving about Drip Drop. I got to try it out, these flavors, and I really enjoy them. My go-to flavor, and I know it might be like a generic flavor, but the orange is very good. Also really like watermelon, but it's just tasty. It's very tasty. It's very refreshing. You just pour it in, add some water, stir it up, and it's good to go. If you had a blender bottle, you wouldn't have to worry about stirring. It's fantastic. I can keep it in my backpack, out there mowing the yard, you name it. It's fantastic. So right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. So if you want to try orange, watermelon, or some of those other flavors, just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code Locked On College against Drip Drop. Locked On listeners, 20% off. Check it out today. Back to this Locked On College crossover of Locked On Utes and Locked On Kansas State. And JT asked me right before the break about what I thought about this Kansas State roster, and you really brought up some really good points. And, talk about the wide receivers first. I think that's probably a good place to start. And you did lose some players. There's no doubt about that, but they brought in some interesting players into the transfer portal. And what I like about this is it might not be like past performances of being great. Like, you look at their roster, you look at their performance, their stat sheet, whatever the case, you might not be impressed. But they're 6'3", they're 6'4". And when you look at some of the issues that Avery Johnson had last year, some of them were inconsistencies. I will say some of them were probably play calling issues as well. When I look at like the interception in Arizona State on the second play of the game, I didn't like that play call. And that was maybe something that Avery Johnson doesn't do in year 2. Now you have had 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers to the mix to make sure that some of those throwing inconsistencies go away. I mean, that target share is a lot wider now, right? The inconsistencies itself should be able to go away. I think that helps it out. Obviously, the tight end group is still amazing. I saw a positional ranking the other day. Might as well bring this up here. I can't remember who put it up. It was on social media. They had Utah as the number 1 in the Big 12 as tight ends. I got to give a big rebuttal against that because
wait, actually, someone said that?
I know, and I
for
disagree.
2025.
I'm glad you do too, because Kansas State, I think, has the best tight end room in the country, not just the Big 12. They could bring back 4 tight ends that help lead the team in red zone touchdowns last year in the country with 13. And then they add in Lincoln Cure, the top prospect in Kansas State program history. So I'm glad you kind of agree with that one. But
can I really quick just jump in? Like, that is an insane.
Please.
And I love my Utah team. I'm going to hype them up as much as I can. Let's look at Utah's tight end room. They moved Otto Tia there, who was a wide receiver at Utah State and really wasn't separating on the outside in spring ball. So now he's a tight end. And they're not like, tight end's not going to be a huge part of this offense. You have Hunter Andrews, who committed to Utah like he was last year was his first year. He has been a linebacker, running back, and now a tight end. He may be the best one. Dallin Bentley's back, a Snow College transfer for them who played last year. I didn't think he was great at all. And I just rattled off the main three tight ends. And I can't believe that they said that was the best group. I think Utah tight end wise in the Big 12, if that's what we're classifying Tia as, even though I think he's just going to be a bigger receiving kind of, and they would be way towards the bottom. So I'm genuinely shocked by that ranking too.
If you would say like it's a ranking from the last 5 years or something like that, I would be like Utah all the way, right? Because historically they've been one of the top tight ends, but going into 2025, I'm with you. There's definitely a lot of conversations, and the fact that you agree to it helps me with my fight. So I really appreciate that. Look, everybody's going to have their rankings. We have rankings as well. Speaking of, we talked about it earlier, but the Locked On Podcast Network brought up their preseason poll. And as I mentioned earlier, Kansas State sitting at number 2, Utah at number 8. You said you had Utah and Texas Tech in Arlington, the Big 12 championship. That's number 3 and 8, according to our rankings. Mine's actually pretty straight chalk. I had Arizona State and Kansas State 1, 2, and I actually had them in that order. I had Arizona State with my first place vote. And then Kansas State still finding a way to get to Arlington, but I had them as number 2. I'm going to go here and give you exactly my thought process. I've gone on predictions on my show the last couple weeks, months, if you will, during the offseason. Have made my way too early predictions because, those are always so much fun to do. And looking at this schedule, I think that the realistic point of Kansas State, because you can say that they could go 12-0, sure, fine. You can say they can go or like that, the floor ceiling, whatever the case. I think 10-2 is very doable for Kansas State this year. One of my losses, though, is to Utah on the road. I don't like how that team sits towards the end of the season because I think Utah, even if they start off slow, is going to figure it out. They play late in the season after going to Stillwater on the road, which I think there's no way they're going to be as bad as they were last year as well. Those two, that 2 games stretch right there between Stillwater and going to Utah, taking on the Utes, Mike Gundy, Kyle Whittingham. There's no way that those 2 teams are going to be as bad as they were last year. I also have, just for the record, Baylor as my other loss in Waco earlier in the season. I got 10-2 for Kansas State this year. What do you think about that? Potentially taking down Wildcats in Utah towards the end of the season.
I really like that record. I think they're right in there. I think, however the game goes when you come out to Utah, I think you guys will do a better job of, not to be a jerk, but showing up than the BYU game. I was still very, as someone who enjoys when BYU does stumble a little bit, that was not fun to watch 38-9 or whatever it ended up being in that one. But it's incredibly hard to win in Salt Lake City and just in Utah in general. We'll keep that in mind. I mean, yes, last year was bad, but as you mentioned, so much of that is quarterback issues. You just watch that offense, and there was massive issues there. And even if Devin Dampier isn't anywhere close to what Cam Rising was, I think he definitely can be. But you look at like this coming season, to Utah, you just go from bad quarterback play to at least what I feel like is, I think it'll be above average, but at the worst, I feel like it'll be average just with how talented Devin Dampier is on a skill set basis. Now he's got to hone in the accuracy and some things there, but it's very hard to win in Utah. The only team outside of last year and like the last 4 years to win in Utah was that Oregon team in 2023. They came to Salt Lake City and beat Utah. And once again, that was without Cam Rising. So it's like this Utah team. Arizona State just won the conference last year, 2 years ago. Very different ASU team. Yes, it was 55-3 when they came out to Salt Lake City. And yes, ASU had some backup quarterbacks in. So did Utah. Like, this is a Utah team of culture. They've won a ton at home under Kyle Whittingham. They've had a lot of success. The defensive culture, the tenacity that they play with, it's very hard to win up in Salt Lake City. And I do look at this game against Kansas State, and I would lean Utah right now, but I will say Avery Johnson is the type of quarterback where I agree that he is capable of being a dark horse Heisman contender. I think he's got a chance to come in and win games in a place like Utah. You have to have the quarterback in order to be able to do it. A lot of people remember that 2022 Utah USC game, right? Yes, Utah was able to squeak it out and win it, but Caleb Williams put on an absolute masterclass. You need the right quarterback, in my opinion, to win in Salt Lake City overall in a year when a Utah team is good like this. So I do think that's going to be a great game. And I'll also say to your record prediction, I could absolutely see 10-2 for Kansas State. Did I predict Kansas State in the title game? No, I didn't. I just think that some of these games are going to come down to the wire, and I think it's not going to work out in Kansas State's favor. You may want more than that for why, but you know what? Honestly, it's the Big 12 conference. Like, we see it just go this way all the time. I'm someone, I didn't pick Arizona State to make it to the title game. And honestly, I even go back and forth on that because I'm like, they have the roster I like the most. I'm just going off the fact that history says you don't go back to that title game. Literally no one since Colorado, outside of Texas and Oklahoma, since Colorado in 2004, 2005 has made it into back-to-back Big 12 title games. That's the kind of history that Arizona State and Iowa State are going to be fighting this season. And when you're looking for bounce-back teams, and Kansas State not as much a bounce-back, I'd say, but to reach that team and have a chance to win the Big 12 like they did a couple years ago, I think that the Wildcats have a great chance to do so.
That's a really good point, and I'm glad you brought that up. I did put Arizona State trying to beat the odds there just because they bring back so much, but there's a lot of exciting things to discuss about that. I want to get your predictions about where you think Utah can go and maybe floor and ceiling as we finish up this episode, and then talk about the Big 12 as a whole, maybe get some little bit of fall camp thoughts as we head into the final portion of the offseason before the season starts. Let's do that as we finish up this show right here on this Locked On College crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Utes. Locked On College crossover, Locked On Kansas State, Locked On Utes, bringing you some Big 12 coverage like no one else, your team every day. And we're talking, I think, how Utah and Kansas State game towards the end of the season could be one of the most defining games of the year, not for both programs, but just for the Big 12 as a whole. I mean, 2 years ago, we're talking about a 7-team tiebreaker, 2 games to go left in the season to decide who's going to make it to Arlington. This could be one of those games that maybe Utah or Kansas State needs to win to stay into consideration to go to Arlington. Maybe one of them's playing spoiler for the others. Who knows the case may be. Utah obviously didn't have a great season last year. That doesn't mean that they're out of contention by any stretch of the imagination the following year in the Big 12. Heck, I think even Oklahoma State could find a way to shock somebody, and they didn't win a single game in the Big 12 last year. What makes you think that Utah can be battling for the contention to get to Arlington, because you have them predicted to go against Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship? So I assume your ceiling's pretty high. Where you have the floor and ceiling for Utah in 2025, potentially Kyle Whittingham's final season?
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's likely as we just sit here right now, based on people I've talked to. But we'll see how it plays out. I do think there's a world where Utah's 12. Is that my prediction? No. But when we're talking ceiling, I think you at least throw it out there that there's a chance this team, this roster could come together. Mention the chance the quarterback has to be special. When you have the talent in the trenches that Utah does, especially on the offensive side of the ball, the consistency year in and year out they do on defense with a lot of strong veterans there, I think that's in play. If everyone stays healthy, I think the floor for Utah is 7-5. Could it be worse than that? Sure. But I just look at this team and I go, I don't see how they are 500 or worse if everyone stays healthy. If people start to get hurt, major contributors, quarterbacks and the offensive line and things of that nature, then I could see that. But it's hard for me to believe, as bad as Utah was in one-score games last year, that's going to happen again. That just history also shows us that when you're bad in one-score games one year, usually flips to the next. We've seen that a lot with the TCUs of the world. Oklahoma State is another one of that, where you look at these teams that get by on these one-score games and usually they fall back. That's why I was already, and yes, I know I'm the Utah guy, but I was already like kind of thinking BYU was going to take a step back this season. Now the Retzloff thing has happened, and I think they are in for a major step back this season. I think they're going to make a bowl game, not like a step back like a Utah had, but I do see them falling back a little bit too. And I said, I have a very high ceiling on Utah. Right now, I have them in the Big 12 title game as we sit here. It's a schedule that sets Utah up for success, in my opinion. Utah plays some incredibly challenging teams, right? This year, you get Texas Tech, you do get West Virginia, but I was going to say Kansas State, obviously being more of a challenging one there too. Arizona State, but Texas Tech, Arizona State, Kansas State, all those games at home. That's massive for Utah. And Utah does not have to go back-to-back road games a single time on the season. Utah has a chance to make a statement week 1 of the year too, as you guys will be trying to make a statement week 0. Early prediction, I do think you guys win that game. I think the Cyclones are going to have a little bit of a Falcon Super Bowl hangover this season. Oh. They'll still be good, but I think that by the time we get down to the final week of the regular season, I do not think Iowa State will be in the Big 12 title race. But looking at this Utah-Kansas State thing, you guys will make a statement week 0. We get UCLA week 1 at the Bruins place too. A lot of Tennessee fans going to be hate watching for Nico. Nico's first game. I think Utah's got a chance to make a statement week 1, and they'll hope to carry it on from there. They get Texas Tech week 1 of Big 12 play, and you close the season with Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas. No bye weeks along that schedule either. The Kansas one being at home. So Utah, the best teams they play, in my opinion, come at home. Maybe the exception to that is a Baylor. It's probably the toughest game they have on their schedule. Utah has beaten Baylor in back-to-back seasons, but we've also spent the whole pod talking about how different one season from the next is. So that'll obviously a big thing that pays in mind. But to me, Utah has the talent. They have the coaching to win the Big 12. They just got to go out there and execute, because they're going to be playing a lot of teams that have the talent and coaching to win the Big 12. Even, Christian, I'll turn it over to you with this. I think there's a lot of similarities between the way Kyle Whittingham and Chris Klieman run their programs as well. They are two of my favorite coaches in this conference. Absolutely.
I don't disagree with that at all. I really enjoy the culture of what Whittingham's brought, and I've gone on record to say how I feel Chris Kleiman's the perfect successor for Bill Snyder for what he's done. He's brought that Midwest mentality. He's continued it. He's done great on the recruiting trail. He focuses on fit, not stars, which I think is really important when you're talking about building a Big 12 team, because you're not going to always win those 5-star battles. Let even be in the contention for it when you're battling in the state.
Did you get a 5-star tight end though recently?
Did, yeah, Lincoln Cure, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Sometimes
and he's going to. Oh yes, sometimes you can. Don't get me wrong, and they're fun and flashy to talk about. But he's also from the state of Kansas, right? He's a 5-star from the state of Kansas. That was something that you got to make sure you bank that bad boy. But he focuses on fit, and I think that's really important that Chris Klieman can do. And Whittingham's been proving that he can do that for a long time. I mean, he's the second most tenured coach in college football behind Kirk Ferentz of Iowa. I think I had the same conversation with Cody Stovall of Oklahoma State, and he said Whittingham beat you by like 20 days. He was hired like 20 days ago. So pretty exciting stuff there. I don't disagree with that at all. There's a lot of excitement from Texas Tech. You have them in Arlington. You think that they can potentially make it there? Is it because of the NIL? Is it because of spending, that roster build? What makes you think that McGuire can get past that 9-win mark and finally get himself to the championship game?
That is the big question. You're absolutely right. I think for me, it is you having the quarterback back for another year, and I like what he brings to the table. I like the skill position players they have overall. Now, granted, they have a lot to replace at running back with losing Spears from last year, and I don't love their new back they got in there. He rushed for under 500. It was a USC transfer, so I have some questions there too. Can the offensive line pieces come together and all gel? Little question there too, but overall, it's a very talented offensive line. It's a very talented roster. I think on paper right now, them and Arizona State, but I'd actually probably lean Texas Tech being the most talented roster in the Big 12, because I think Tech is the pass rushers. Obviously got Bailey from Stanford being one of the biggest additions of the college football offseason too. They made a splash with that top 3 portal class. I think it's a defense that's really strong. Got an outstanding linebacker in the middle of the field too. And even if they stumble earlier in the year against a Utah, and right now I actually do have Utah winning that game, I look at this roster and I say, I think it's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So right now I do have Tech as the team that gets there, because there is just so much talent at every level of the field for them. Can it all come together? We've talked about, there's just something to be said about transfer portal and how it affects a roster. Some years you get Indiana, you get Colorado last year. Other years you get Colorado from 2 years ago, and you get Florida State from last year. So that's why I'm curious to see how this all comes together for Tech. But it's hard to argue with the talent that they have. And Christian, you're riding again with ASU, and you also have Kansas State right up there as well too. Was there anyone else that you thought about putting there, or why do you feel like that will end up being the matchup, and ASU defying the history that I talked about earlier?
Yeah, Tech was third on my preseason poll, but Baylor makes me nervous. I don't know what it is. I really think Baylor, I look at their schedule, they get a lot of games at home. That's impressive. They got to play Kansas State in Waco. They get Utah in Waco. They get Arizona State in Waco. So some of their tough conference opponents they get to do at home. Sawyer Robertson, I think, is a really impressive quarterback. I don't really understand what Dave Aranda is trying to talk about in some of his press conferences, but that's neither here nor there.
I think he's a good coach. Apparently, it's a hot take amongst our Big 12 people, but he has won a conference title. I know it didn't go great last year or 2 years ago, but I think he's a good coach overall.
I do too. But I think that it would not be. I think it would be asinine to think that he could potentially not be in the hot seat if he doesn't have a successful year. I think that there's a weird vibe with Dave Aranda. I think there's a potential of him, but he could be a Big 12 championship caliber team this year, or you could see him go 5-7 and be on the hot seat. It's a really weird feel for Baylor. I can't figure them out. Baylor and TCU are the two teams I really can't figure out this year. We'll see what happens if they become successful. But if I had to pick
TCU,
one,
we get to learn a lot about early. because they go to Carolina that week 1 on Labor Day, standalone window. That's a massive game.
Super early. Let's do one non-Big 12 talk here. If you had to put, you just brought up Florida State, and it came to my mind how they were just completely just dumbfounded. No one even had them, Florida State, being as bad as they were going to be last year. Who do you think that is this year? Who is this year's Florida State?
That's a great question. Is there a team that jumps out to you right now as we sit here?
I honestly didn't even come to my mind until right now, but oh man.
I say there's a chance, like, it would be funny if Illinois fell apart this year, and I do think
that would be like the one that I would think of right off the bat would be maybe Illinois.
Yeah, they're not top 10. I will say I like Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's a good quarterback. I do not like Brian Kelly, so that's another one too. A lot of people are trying to talk themselves into LSU. I could see that going off the rails again too. Those are two of the biggest ones that jump out to me right now. I talked about some of my fears with Iowa State a little bit earlier too. And
could it be Tennessee without Nico? Do you think that might be?
Well, I think Tennessee's in trouble. Like, I think a lot of people are even forecasting that. I think Tennessee finishes outside the top 5 of the SEC this year. I would love to be wrong about that because I was rooting for Tennessee in the whole Nico thing. I definitely was pro Tennessee during that, but sure. I think it's hard when you lose your quarterback, and the people are not super high on Aguilar, the transfer they got from UCLA. So I think there's a chance they take a step back with how good the rest of the SEC is too. Also, another one, people aren't super hot. I don't see Ole Miss being as good this year. I think they take a step back. I do not think they're a top 15 team in college football. And one of those teams that I mentioned, LSU, you could throw South Carolina, like one of those SEC teams is really going to underwhelm and probably be unranked to end the season. But Christian, on a future episode of Big 12 squad or whatever it is, we'll have to figure out who will be this year's Florida State, because it's going to be fascinating to see which team comes in, all this talk, all this expectations, and just falls apart and burns and crashes before our eyes.
Yes, that is definitely something we need to add to the mix for sure when we actually decide to talk about college football on one of those.
Not hairlines.
What's that now?
Not hairlines. Don't want to talk about hairlines on
we don't want to do that. We're not interested in that. No, we want to keep away from the hairlines. Hey, before I get you to go, fall camp has just started for Kansas State. We were a week early. It's about to start for you. I think it already just started this week for you. What's the biggest storyline that you're really paying attention to for Utah? Like, what's the one that you think could be a defining storyline for the beginning of the season to make sure the Utes start off strong?
I think it's who's going to catch the dang ball. We already talked about the tight ends being just a total, like, what is going to happen here? I would say the exact same thing about the wide receivers. There are guys I like and that I think will be good. There's not a single Utah's like leading receiver who returned on this roster. I'm pretty sure was under 200 yards last season. So you got a lot of transfers in there. Otto Tia was the guy I brought up. We had 500 at Utah State, but they already moved him to a tight end. Tobias Merriweather's got a lot of talent. He had over 400 yards with Cal last year, but he's battled health and inconsistencies as well. So it's got to be that wide receiver position, as well as who steps up along the defensive line. But could also say too, and I don't think we'll learn this till the season starts, but like, how does Devin Dampier look? I'm very high on him. A lot of people are, but there is definitely a world where he does not take that next step. And Utah is able to be better this year, but they are more in line with what our Big 12 rankings have in 8 rather than in that top 4 as I project them to be.
I love it. We'll see if Utah can shock them and find themselves in Arlington. Maybe there's a Kansas State Utah lineup in Arlington. Maybe
I can't wait for our game, man. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun season.
It's going to be a really good game. Looking forward to that. Enjoyed this college crossover. JT, we got to do this again soon. Hopefully before we play towards the end of the season, because there's just plenty to talk about, and hopefully that both these teams are successful getting in towards November, because it'll just make that game even that much more electric. Lockdown College crossover. Please like the video. Please subscribe. Please rate wherever you're listening, and we'll see you back here with another episode soon.